This is Twit.
Why don't you give us the 30,000-foot view? What problem are people solving when they're reaching for the stuff that you're producing? And also, how do you pronounce it?
Yeah, it's pronounced Aion. I don't think I had anything to defend because I don't think you were being too unfair about it. I think to a large extent, that's very much the state of the industry today. Very interesting technology that's being developed where the use cases and applications are still theoretical to a large extent. There's some stuff that's starting to happen that's pretty interesting, the concepts around decentralized financial systems. But if you want to think very simply about a blockchain, this is a distributed network of computers that essentially operates as a single operating system so that you can run software and applications on the backbone of a global network of connected computers instead of like relying on a cloud provider or some sort of centralized company to provide that infrastructure for you. And that has all sorts of implications as to how you might build businesses and what those businesses might be able to do without the censorship of a centralized infrastructure in the back end.
Were there contracts in the original Bitcoin?
No, I mean, Bitcoin is a lot simpler of an architecture by design, and I think it's a big part of the reason that Bitcoin is so has such lasting power is that its intended design 10 years ago is still its intended design today. So Bitcoin doesn't see itself going through a lot of technological changes. It very simply it works as a system of value storage and a system of transfer of large amounts of value. There are criticisms as to its design, as to whether it's worth the trade-off, but I think to a large extent, it's proven kind of resilience, which is exactly what you want when you're building a new global financial system. The new blockchain systems that are being built, like Aion and others, are starting to layer on how do you build additional logic on top of these systems so that you can start running more intelligent applications beyond just financial transactions. So that's where you start getting into smart contracts, which essentially are the layers of logic that you'd build into an app. That could be anything as varied as, if we use simple internet analogies, can be anything as varied as ride sharing to, potentially eventually doing like video streaming on top of these technologies.
Now, as I was reading through the documentation, I was seeing that you were actually, your network provides a way of actually interpreting Java bytecodes. Can you explain more about that?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the big gaps that we've been focusing on, the Aion Foundation as an organization that I lead is focused on the research and development of the underlying protocols. So what needs to be true for these protocols to be more usable and available for kind of mainstream software developers. And one of the things that we kind of kept running into is that it was a very inefficient and kind of broken, high friction process if you were a software developer that wanted to build an app on top of a blockchain. And part of that was language availability, part of that was performance, and just available tooling and infrastructure. So we went down this path of building Aion off of call it tried and true technology, specifically the Java virtual machine, the ability to kind of interpret Java bytecode as the contract layer so that you can write logic into these smart contracts using Java. And what that gave us that's quite different than most other blockchain protocols is the fact that Java engineers can use 90 to 95% of the workflow that they're already familiar with and the tools and Java libraries that they're already familiar with that just kind of work for the purpose of writing applications on top of a blockchain. If you go down the other path, most blockchains have kind of either tried to invent their own language, invent their own tools, invent their own infrastructure. It's a very broken user experience. So our target market is the software developer that is looking for a place to build their next app, essentially.
And how complex can these apps be that are eventually powered by the Aion network?
Quite complex. I mean, the interesting thing about these apps, quite differently than the apps that you might think about, is that publishing an application on top of a blockchain means that it's by design an immutable piece of logic. So it's very difficult to change, if not impossible to change. So you have to think very long and hard about what types of applications and what types of logic do you want to be completely immutable. So financial systems is one area where you're getting a lot of interesting applications. We have applications being built in this, the term being used in the industry now is DeFi, which kind of short form for decentralized finance. And DeFi is mechanisms that, people are building smart contracts that essentially replicate the logic of derivative systems, credit systems, equity systems, but all of these things built as applications or smart contracts on top of public blockchains. But then you could also go the other way and you could do anything that's non-financial as well and just simply use the blockchain as kind of a computing layer to execute any type of logic on any type of application.